Good afternoon. Can everybody hear us on Zoom? Yes. Great.
Yes.
Thank you. Can everybody see presentation? Yeah, on Zoom, can you see the PowerPoint? Great, thank you, Julia. All right, it's 12:15, so we're going to start. Thank you so much for coming. Today we have a fair trade presentation, and I would like to introduce our guest speaker, who is Elizabeth Killough. We've known each other probably for over 5 years now. We are both volunteers. We both have full-time jobs, so this is something we share as a passion. And she's going to tell you more about herself and about fair trade. And if you have any questions, you feel free to raise your hand during the presentation or after, and we will be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Happy Valentine's Day and a day. Thank you for coming to the presentation. I don't have a clicker, so I'm going to be over here moving the slides forward. So yes, I helped make media a fair trade town, and you all might know Drew Arata in the banana suit. We're hoping he learns to express his feelings more than he does. So what the heck is fair trade and why should you care? Fair trade is very simple and it has a lot of complications, but today we're just going to stick with the simple. And my Vanna White is a fair trade doll here, and she's with 2 cans of Trader Joe's coffee. Fair trade started in earnest about 35 years ago, and it started with coffee. And one of only 2 questions I'm going to ask the live audience is, why do you think it started with coffee? There are 2 reasons. Take a guess, be brave.
Farmers?
Pardon me?
Farmers supply?
Coffee is, oh, I have an echo. One of the only products still produced by mostly small farmers. So it was a way to reach many small landowning farmers. And the second reason.
I guess just like Starbucks.
You sort of hit on it with the word Starbucks. Coffee is the second most traded commodity in the world by weight, second only to oil. So it was a way to reach a lot of small farmers. So you 2 each win a large fair trade chocolate bar. And this is from Equal Exchange, which is a wonderful fair trade company that has set itself up as a cooperative since. Yeah, I know. Yeah. So here are 2 cans of Trader Joe's coffee up on the screen and in person. This one costs $4.99. It's not fair trade. This one costs $9.99. It is fair trade. So there's a $5 difference. And what do you get for that difference? And what do the farmers get? And Trader Joe's marks their fair trade coffee very well. So we're going to look at the $5 difference. So with fair trade, children have to go to school. And they're not allowed to farm during school hours. That's a sea change. Farmers receive low interest credit rating. They receive technical assistance, which they need because fair trade farming requires many changes, which you'll see in a second. They have to rebuild animal habitats. So Maxwell House and Nestle like to deforest land and grow coffee in the sun because it grows much faster. So we have so many deforested coffee plantations. So the farmers have to rebuild the animal habitats. And for coffee, that means trees for migratory birds. It also makes for better coffee grown in the shade. Farmers are guaranteed a minimum price for coffee. The price of coffee internationally is extremely erratic, and it's very hard on farmers to ever work out their finances. But with this promise of a minimum price, they have much more security. If and when the international price goes above that, they're guaranteed that price as well. Fair trade allows for no genetically modified seeds. And whatever you feel about GMOs, none of us need food baked in the pesticides that go with GMOs, with Roundup, a known carcinogen. It's bad for the farmers and it's bad for us. Most fair trade products are certified organic or at least passive organic. And passive organic means the 3 to 5 years required to make the land certifiable to be organic. They're also of the highest quality. When fair trade coffee started, it was any coffee, and the movement fell on its face. And then it learned it had to be only the top quality coffee. Women have to be part of decision-making in fair trade. And this is huge. And many fair trade farmers tell me that this is the hardest hurdle in becoming fair trade. And it stopped working. Okay. Fair trade farmers have to form a co-op and sell through the co-op. They no longer compete with each other, dealing with middlemen. They all work together. And a benefit of the co-op is, as a farmer, each farmer receives the amount of money for the poundage that they sell through the co-op. But at the end of the season, the co-op receives what's called a premium. And for that, it's not allowed to be divided evenly. It has to be used by the community. So most co-ops invest that in schools and health clinics. And a plus of the premium is it builds up whole communities, and people are less likely to want to emigrate to cities. You know, we need farmers. We need to figure out a way of how to keep people farming for us. So just this one certifier alone in 25 years has given $1.5 billion to premiums. And most of that has actually been in the last 5 years. The movement is growing quickly and exponentially, fortunately. So just back to the non-fair trade coffee, this doesn't have all those good things. Kids are farming, bad chemicals are being used, topsoil's getting used up, more deforestation, women aren't a part of decision-making and all that stuff. This is a fairly traded scrub bush squirrel. So now I'm going to switch to chocolate, and I hope you're all tasting the chocolate on the back row. Feel free to get up and help yourselves. It's one of the major food groups here that we're serving you today. So Hershey's, as you must know, is not fair trade. And it invariably has cocoa produced from child slave laborers. There's an excellent documentary called The Dark Side of Chocolate, which shows how children are gotten into slavery and where they're working, most of them in Ivory Coast. Every time you reach for Hershey or a non-fair trade chocolate bar, you're probably eating cocoa produced by a slave child. Here are 2 fair trade chocolate bars. They're both great and they're both delicious. And I have some of Divine's chocolate here too that I'll pass around. Divine sent this for all of you. So if someone could grab this. Take a couple.
So what does Hershey say about it? 'Cause I know a lot of their friends do go there to like the milk and Hershey school, which is motivate a lot of people to buy Hershey's
So
chocolate.
Hershey had told us that by 2010, they would be fair trade. And they've done nothing to change. Instead, what they did was move production from Hershey, Pennsylvania to Mexico.
Yeah, but it seems in conflict, you know, they have this big part of their mission is this Hershey school and supporting, you know, education activism, right?
Money and education, and they're just not going to change. We're trying. So, this is fair trade and this is fair trade, and you have to look, I'll show you the symbols in a minute, but here are two of the symbols. And Divine, as with many fair trade companies, is raising the bar even above the fair trade bar. So they've given part ownership of their company to the cocoa farmers themselves. So you can be a fair trade farmer, get certified, but have a drought that year and have nothing. But if you're a fair trade farmer working for Divine, you own part of the company, so you still get some of the profits. So the co-op for Divine is in New Koforidua, Ghana. And this is one of Media's 2 fair trade sister cities. Just take a moment to see what they have. This is their welcome house. The symbols of most of the world's major religions across the top. And it says, welcome, may your God be with you, the cooperative house. And we're sending, hopefully, 2 people from Media there this year. New Koforidua, Ghana is also the 1,000th fair trade town in the world. These are 2 farmers from that cooperative in Ghana who visited Media about 10 years ago. And I'm sorry, I cannot remember their names, but the woman made such an impression on me. And I said to her, what does it really mean that women have to be part of decision-making? And she lit up and said so clearly, before fair trade, women and children did all the farming. And men sold the cocoa to the various middlemen, kept the money and controlled the money. When fair trade happened and they formed Coapa Cocoa in New Koforidua, Ghana, the co-op voted that all the farms owned by men and women had to be divided in half, with the men farming half and the women farming half. And she now gets to sell what she produces through the co-op. Her children and grandchildren have gotten to go to school, and it's completely changed her life. So here are 2 Kit Kat bars. And the one on the left is certified fair trade, and the one on the right is not. So here's my second question to you. Why is one fair trade and one is not? Take a guess.
Depends on where it's being sold.
You got it. You got it. Yeah. The fair trade one is sold in the United Kingdom and Europe. And the one on the right is sold in the US. So Europe is so far ahead of us in demanding fair trade. And we could demand it too. But here's the rub. The one that's fair trade, once COVID happened, Nestle stopped using fair trade cocoa and they removed the certification. And this is so frustrating. We backtracked as well in Media. You know, as soon as COVID hit, restaurants and businesses were struggling to stay afloat, and fair trade was not as much a priority. This also happened in 2009 during the economic downturn. We really need consumers to keep up purchasing so that we don't have these downturns. So how do I feel when all this happens and these setbacks happen? That's how I feel. Just, it's so frustrating. And I'm so angry at Nestle for taking advantage of COVID. And when we have these setbacks, I turn to Bruce Crowther on the right. He's the father of fair trade towns. And he's visited us on several occasions. His town is the world's first fair trade town, Garstang, England, and that's Media's second sister city. So Garstang and Nuko-Furujiwa and Media form a triangle that also happens to be the slave trade route for when the US had slavery. And so we're trying to redress that through our relationship. So here's the sign in Garstang. So Bruce has given Media various gifts over the years. This is the most recent, and it's very disturbing and very powerful. It's a wrist iron used on enslaved children in the US in the 1700s and early 1800s. And I'm going to pass it around. I mean, you need to just touch this and feel it. But Bruce gave this to us and asked us to bring it to all speaking engagements to remind all of us that there's more slavery now than there was when slavery was legal in the US. And a lot of the slavery is in the cocoa and sugar industries. And it's as simple as not buying the ones that aren't fair trade certified. So how does something become certified? So I'm just going to talk about agriculture first. There's an organization called Killough that works internationally, that visits all the farms that want to be fair trade. And they help them with technical assistance to become fair trade. So the farms themselves get certified. And then from there, each country has a second certifier with a label, and they're the ones who put the label on the can. And they follow the product from the farm to what you purchase and promise you that it's the same product. And fair trade has no middlemen. The retailers, wholesalers know the farmers and develop long-term relationships with them. I know with Equal Exchange, the makers of the big bars I'm giving out, they encourage their staff to spend some of their vacation time on fair trade farms that they deal with, and they help them build clinics and schools. Here's another certifier that we like and support. So I said it's complicated. It starts to get complicated. So things like coffee are easy to regulate, to set a standard of how it's grown and what the end product should be. But my bracelets, fair trade, my earrings are fair trade. How do you decide if those sorts of things are fair trade? So instead of these products being labeled, the retailers get a certain kind of certification guaranteeing that they're paying artisans a fair amount, that the artisans are working in good conditions. So there are two organizations that certify is not quite the right word, but they certify businesses. So one in Media is 10,000 Villages that has this certification. And it's still complicated because there used to be just one certifier in each country. And now there are more certifiers, and they're competing, and they're saying they're not as good as we are, but we've picked the three that I showed you a minute ago. And we're not happy, for example, with Rainforest Alliance. So all of Wawa's coffee is certified by them, but it's a much weaker certification, a much lower bar. It's better than nothing. And before now, Wawa wouldn't use any certifiers. So that's part of the complication. Yes, we're happy about it, and no, we're not. So what can you do? So buy fair, buy local. Some people think these are competing things, but they go together. Buy everything you can locally. Support your local farmers. Support your local dressmakers. But what we don't produce locally, coffee, tea, sugar, olive oil, wine, some wines are local, but buy from other locally controlled economies. And look for the certification. Here's a lemon I bought recently. I bought artichoke hearts. Was surprised to see they're fair trade. Papaya, sugar. You can get everything you need online, or you can go to retailers. I mean, Earth and State and Media is the quintessential buy fair, buy local. They support artisans from Pennsylvania, and their other products are fairly traded from around the world. Burlap and Bean in Media is our only 100% fair trade business. Before COVID, it had 4 locations. Now it has 1. Need your support. If you're lucky, when you go, you'll see Wanda Sykes there. She was there last time I was there. That was my chief thrill of the week. And give your love to fair trade towns. There are over 2,000 in the world. On the right is my boss who died several years ago. It was his idea to make Media a fair trade town. There are many fair trade houses of worship. And as you know, there are fair trade universities and schools. Penn State, Brandywine is one of 77 in the US. And here's an early part of your journey with Laura Garden, giving a presentation on fair trade at the Walden School in Media. And here's a more recent showing of your fair trade work. So I want to come back to Media for a minute and then end with a story about Media. So we started a kerfuffle when we became a fair trade town 17 years ago. San Francisco wanted to be the first fair trade city, but we beat them. Competitive edge came out. And we've worked to get lots of products into stores. This is Kucha. They do a great job at labeling what's fairly traded. We try to show people products that are already around that are fair trade that they didn't realize were fair trade. We do things like have fair trade soccer ball juggling contests, sports equipment. It's all made by children for the most part in really horrible factories. There's a new line of soccer balls and other things. Our mayor comes to all of our fair trade juggling contests. He's a great juggler. He's there in the middle. This was from a fair trade fashion show we did. We run bananas in the Media 5-mile race. Everyone in Media gets a banana smartphone for living in Media. And it's children who get fair trade. So this little girl named Snow is holding up a book that she wrote. It's actually called The Dragon Version. It's on fair trade, but children get it's not fair. It's just not fair that other kids can't go to school. It's not fair that they're sprayed with chemicals while they're working in these fields for us. So kids have been our greatest allies. So after we had been a fair trade town for a few years, the Delaware Valley Bar Association contacted us to say, we want to give you our annual award, the Themis Award. And a few days before the ceremony, the president of the Bar Association called and he said, I'll be giving the talk and I'll be bestowing the award on you. And it's held in the courthouse in a courtroom in front of all the judges of Delaware County. And he said, we love organizations that create new laws that really help people. And I paused and said, but fair trade doesn't require any laws. No treaties, no international agreements. It's a people-to-people form of development. And I invited him to withdraw the offer of giving us the award. And he's like, no, we love what you've done for Media. I'm going to figure something out. And I was so curious, what's he gonna say? So what he did say was, he started in on this discussion about how our laws come mostly from English common law, and they set a minimum of how we need to treat each other. Don't kill each other, don't steal from each other, don't set each other's homes on fire. Don't. But fair trade establishes how we should treat each other. How we should treat each other fairly, how we should not grow food and chemicals, how children should go to school. And it sets a bar of where laws need to come. We need better legislation and treaties about child labor and about child trafficking and children in slavery. We need to stop importing these goods. We need to have more control. It was very beautiful. So a professional photographer took all these race pictures, and she called this a day in the life in media. A little more love from Drew. And here I am with the Untour's office dog, Milo. He's much smaller than he looks, but he's right up to the camera. Happy to talk about this with any of you at any time. Please reach out to me. So fair trade, should you care? I hope you already care. And if you don't care, I hope you start thinking about it every time you reach for a cup of coffee and all the food that's on our table. Think about where it came from, who worked for you, our clothes. I'm not wearing any fair trade clothes today. I feel really badly about that. We just have a great power as consumers to make a lot of changes. So thank you so much for your attention, and happy to answer any questions or hear your comments. Thank you.
So I just want to say that I'm inspired and I'm glad you did this. And I'm also glad I made time to come. I'm a person who hasn't worn Nike in like, I don't know, 30 years. And at some point I gave up, right? Because it was so hard to find clothes that weren't being made in sweatshops and other places.
Yeah.
And it's nice to know that there's a movement where I can try again. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I still don't wear Nike, but at the same time, I've just given up on trying to avoid only wearing clothes that, I know aren't produced in sweatshops.
Yes.
And so it's nice to know that maybe there's some momentum back in this direction.
There's momentum, and it takes a lot of energy, especially clothes. At the Untours Foundation, we're invested in several clothing companies, and one's in Philadelphia. And I keep meaning to suggest this entrepreneur as the graduation speaker, Kimberly McClellan, but she makes all of her clothes for her company called Grant Boulevard out of clothes from thrift shops. And she's hiring women returning from prison and teaching them how to sew. And the fashion's really fascinating. She's in Powelton, and it's really a cool visit and speak to her. She would be happy to do that. And then we're invested in a company in Cambodia that's making all of its clothes out of fabric left over from other factories that would normally just be thrown away and burned. And she hires single moms, and so she's sitting lots. So there are all these great companies, but you have to sort them out. And then fair trade certification is now certifying clothes, so that's another place to look. And Senda we're invested in them too. The soccer ball makers, they now have sports shoes, so they're not quite an alternative to Nike, but we're getting there.
Isn't Patagonia one of the companies that uses fair trade? I know they try to be resourceful. I'm not sure fair trade.
We just got to give the president of Patagonia an award. The Untours Foundation, where I work, is the world's first B Corporation, and that's another cool thing. And Patagonia is B Corporation, and the B Corp people give an award every year to one of their companies, and they gave it to Patagonia, but they asked us to give it because our founder, like their founder, gave away the profits from Untours, and the founder of Patagonia is now going to give all of his profits away, and it's going to be about $100 million a year, and that's going to go to the environment. But what I find so moving about Yvon Chouinard's story at Patagonia is he's a rock climber. And first he started making clothes that he felt he needed for rock climbing that weren't available. And then he learned about organic cotton, like, oh, maybe I should only use organic cotton. So he did that. And then he visited organic cotton farms and saw that that's still not using regenerative agriculture. It's still not rebuilding the topsoil. So now Patagonia buys only cotton from regenerative farms that are growing organic cotton. And now they're recycling products and using other clothes and blankets and things and making it. So they're just so thoughtful about the whole process. So I feel so great about that.
I have a question. So, you showed the price comparison between like a fair trade chocolate and not fair trade chocolate, and it seems like a pretty large amount of money. So how can, and like, I know like fast fashion, like personally, I don't shop at fast fashion because I can afford to shop at better, like more like ethical clothing companies. But
Yeah.
how can low income families and people that can't really afford that $9 chocolate support fair trade?
That's a really tough question. And part of the answer is that those of us who can afford it need to get on the ball. And then things like, I'm always more willing to spend more like with a hostess gift. And I used to buy wine and I buy fair trade wine when I can, but now when I go somewhere, I give someone a bottle of olive oil. So I do a lot of my fair trade shopping through gifting when I'm gifting. And the chocolate is more like $3 and $4. And it's also a great gift, but it tastes so much better. But part of it is we have to just start accepting that we need to live on less and treat the people better who are producing for us. We're so spoiled. We want this lifestyle that we have.
But if more of us did it, then the cost would go down.
Yes, and it does go down, yeah. Like even with the Trader Joe's fair trade coffee, their fair trade coffee costs less than most because they do a big volume business.
Elizabeth, we have a comment from one of the media members, Barbara. Would you like to introduce Barbara first? So
Yes.
people know who she is?
Barbara Bowles, an active member of our committee. She's a PhD and she wrote her dissertation on fair trade towns.
So we're gonna remove the slideshow so we can see her.
Okay. Hi, Barb.
Hey, I wanted to speak to the fast fashion conundrum because there is a lot of movement in that. And I can say unequivocally that quality wins. I have fair trade dresses that have lasted for 20 years or more that I still wear, and they're still beautiful, and the quality is really, really great. And fast fashion really wears out quickly, and that's why it's cheap. Personally, I have one website that I love a lot called Marketplace India, and I only shop the clearance. So affordability is an issue, but it's a worthy pursuit. And there's an awful lot going on in Europe and around the world to change the fashion industry and to change what's happening. So I just really wanted to share that.
Thank you so much. And along with that, I hadn't understood that our clothes is now meant to last only so many washings. I used to think, oh, it's just me that my t-shirts have gotten wider and shorter, but they're only designed to last 5 to 10 washings. So it really helps when things last a long time.
There's also companies that sell used. There's a company called Red Up that I
Yes.
always use. I got a wedding dress or a mother of the bride dress for my daughter's wedding for $10.
Oh,
And I told everyone about it at the wedding. They're going, oh my gosh, Lynn, you could afford one. I said, that's not the point.
yes,
That's not the,
yes.
it was gorgeous. And it was, all my clothing today, used clothing. That's what I wear, that's what I do. And I think we need to just talk about it more to everyone. And unfortunately, you know, I talk a lot, but I talk to everyone, and even if it's not in the conversation, I work it in.
Thank you. Here, you get my last bar. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I have tons of these. These are wonderful. And I got one more.
Any other questions, comments?
I guess my question is there a next step for Brandywine as being able to this work? Like I know how we're in and how we're already invested, but what are the next steps for us to further support?
I can't answer that. I'm not part of the community. Here to help.
Julie, would you like to address this as a co-chair of our Sustainability Commission?
I'm not sure if I have all the answers, but you know, clearly we have certain requirements for our status that we need to continue to support. The age-old challenge is to break through the clutter of, you know, the many different things we care about as a campus, and, you know, perhaps trying to work to build bridges across some of the same themes that currently seem a little bit separated might be a fruitful effort to start to really link all of these things that we really do care about. This is a campus that has been committed to some level, type, or, you know, investment in community building, you know, internally and externally since I arrived. This is my 15th year. So it's a campus that deeply cares about many different facets of well-being, you know, locally and globally. So maybe that's one of our challenges, is to find a way to begin to thread these things better together so that they don't become, you know, one-offs that we hear about. Maybe we find the chocolate and buy it or not, but instead it becomes something we're committed to as part of a larger set of things we focus on, you know, as professionals on campus, but as individuals privately. And we need to continue to support the activities that are part of our certification, you know, that we attend and we promote, and we get our students there and we raise these topics, not just fair trade, but everything that's sort of corollary that we've just now, you know, exhibited in some of the Q&A in our classes, and build the students' future capacities and commitments themselves. I think that's happening, but maybe, you know, with a certain level of planning and some resources to support us, we could make it something that's a more systemic type of initiative. But thank you for your sharing with everyone today.
Oh, sure. Thank you. My daughter lives in London, and I love going through the shops, and I found some fair trade condoms. Like there's so many other things that are fair trade in Europe, and it's like, this is what we could be if we just had a little more imagination and a little more generosity of heart.
So I think it would be great if the campus had a sign like we have, a permanent sign. I know that the Lion would still be the #1 place for students and families to pose. But if we had a nice sign like media has, and you've got lots of people who like to pose next to it, right? I think that might be a great thing.
I just think these initiatives cannot be one extra thing. It must be embedded. And it's kind of what Julie said, is to be embedded into the very fabric of what we do. Well, of course, we're going to have fair trade chocolate chips at our dinner tonight. I mean, it's not an extra thing, it's a course, and a fair trade this. And right now, actually, there's a fashion show going on. And I believe the fashion show is about used clothing right now in another building.
Great.
Because we'll be donating for career services for people to go out and interview some clothing. And people are right now having a fashion show of used clothing. And we have those kinds of swaps. And so anything we can do to ingrain it into the fabric of what we do.
Yes. So thank you all for sitting inside on this beautiful day. I hope you all get some real sunshine. And,
I'm so glad to see that many people online.
yeah,
Thank you,
and
Elizabeth.
thanks, Barb, thanks, everybody. And, help yourself before you go.
So I